In this video, I will use geometry nodes to create this spinning text animation that explodes in the end. Let's get started. I'll delete this default cube. Next, let me bring in some text. Go to the edit mode and enter any text string. For example, let's say Germany. We'll be using this text string. I'll be using this text string for this animation. This is the topology of this text string, and I will convert it into a mesh. In the edit mode, I'll extrude this text string. Now I will use the remesh modifier to fix the topology of this text mesh. So here you can select the sharp option and change the depth as well as scale. Now you can see the topology is much better than before. Then apply that modifier and our 3D text string is ready. Here you can merge the vertices by distance. And finally, we can move on to geometry nodes and create a geometry node tree for this text string. Let's add separate geometry node, and to the selection input, I'll add a random value and the mode will be Boolean. So here in this node, if you change the value of probability, you can see the geometry of our text mesh is disappearing and reappearing. It's a pretty handy node and we can use it for different types of animations and motion effects. Next, I will pull a new branch out of the group input node and connect it to distribute points on faces. This node will add random points on faces of this geometry or text mesh. To connect any node to the viewer, just select that node, press Shift Control and left click on mouse. So with the density of 400, this is how the points will be distributed on the faces of our text mesh. Now let's add a set position node. This node will be used to move these points away from the main text body. Connect a noise texture node to set position, and you can already see the points that were earlier distributed on the surface of the text are now distorted. I'll add a subtract node and subtract zero point 0.5. So now you can see the points are back to their previous position. However, they're still distorted. Now I will add a vector multiplication node between set position and subtract. I prefer to arrange my nodes like this. Let's connect a value node to the vector input of multiply node. And as you can see, if I change the value of this value node, the points will get further distorted. And we will use this motion or effect in our animation. I've added this set point radius node, and this can be used to change the size of the points. So here you can see that most of the points have been distributed along the edge. Again, let's add another separate geometry node, this time for the points. And similarly, I'll again add a random value node set to boolean. And as you can see, if I change the value of the probability field, these nodes will also disappear and reappear. Now let's add instance on points. We'll replace the points with a mesh, and let's use icosphere. You can use other mesh as well. For example, you can use cone or cube or cylinder. And I've reduced the radius of these icospheres to 0.03. We can also add a set shade smooth node. You can see the instances are now more smooth. And finally, let's add realize instances node. So this node will convert all the instances, that is these points, into a single object. Finally, we will connect the geometry of these points and geometry of the text with the help of join geometry node. Let's add a set material node to both the paths. And here you can see that we have both the geometry of the text as well as of the distributed points. Now in the side panel, I'll create a texture. Let's call it text material. Feel free to select color of your choice. And also make sure that you have selected the same material in the set material node. So for this animation, texture doesn't matter. You can stop here and get started with the animation process. But if you want to modify your texture or add some cool effects to it, you can definitely work on that. Here I'm just trying to have an uneven texture. So I've added a noise texture node paired up with color ramp. Select the noise texture and press Ctrl T, and these nodes, texture coordinate and mapping, will come up on your shader editor. Connect the object from texture coordinate node to your vector input of mapping node, and also change the mapping type to texture. I've added one more color in the color ramp. So you can play around with these levers of color ramp to get the desired texture or pattern. Let's go back to geometry nodes. Now we will work on animating this text string. I have rotated this text string on x-axis. Let's add a keyframe on the first frame in our timeline, and rotate this text string 360-degree on z-axis. Let me change the pivot point for rotation of this text mesh. For that, we can set the origin to geometry. I have reduced the animation clip frames to 100 only. So here my plan is to rotate this text string, and just before, when it is about to complete one full circle, use this separate geometry node for the text body and try to hide the mesh of this text string, and at the same time, and allow these points distributed on the text body to scatter all around and finally disappear. So here I'm trying to set keyframes for the set geometry and random value pair for the text body. Now there is no hard and fast rule to set these keyframes. Based on your requirement, you can play the animation and see where you want to put the keyframes, where you want to make the text disappear or disintegrate or rotate. Similarly, I will set keyframes for the second pair of separate geometry and random value. I'm using this field of probability score to set the keyframes. And now coming back to the value node, we will also use this to set some keyframes, because this node will help us in disintegration and scattering of the points. Now this is the complete animation. Our text is rotating one full circle, then it is getting disintegrated into points which are eventually getting disappeared.